The U.S. has made a big decision. They've officially labeled some Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. This means the U.S. sees these groups as a direct threat, much like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. This move gives the U.S. government more power to act against these cartels. They can now freeze assets and go after anyone supporting them financially. However, this decision has also sparked a lot of debate and raised tensions with Mexico. This isn't just about legal definitions. It's about sending a message. The U.S. is serious about tackling the drug trade and the violence it brings. The cartels have wreaked havoc in Mexico and beyond, with their influence reaching deep into the U.S. itself. They traffic drugs, weapons, and even people. They bribe officials and silence anyone who stands in their way. The U.S. wants to hit them where it hurts, their money and their international connections. But this bold move comes with risks. Some experts worry it could backfire, escalating the violence and making the situation even worse. The cartels are powerful and well-armed. They won't go down without a fight. Plus, there are concerns about how this will affect the already complex relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. The U.S. argues that this designation is necessary to protect its citizens and interests. They point to the cartels' brutal tactics and their role in fueling the opioid epidemic in the U.S. They say that enough is enough. The gloves are off. Mexico isn't happy about the U.S.'s move. They see it as an infringement on their sovereignty. They feel like the U.S. is acting like the world's policeman, meddling in their affairs without their consent. The Mexican government has made it clear that they will not tolerate any U.S. military intervention on their soil. They see this as a matter of national pride and independence. Mexico has its reasons to be wary. The U.S. has a long history of intervention in Latin America, and it hasn't always been pretty. There's a lot of baggage there, a lot of mistrust. Mexico fears that this could be the start of a slippery slope, with the U.S. using this designation as an excuse to further assert its influence in the region. The Mexican government argues that they are capable of handling their own problems. They point to their own efforts to combat the cartels, though these efforts have often been met with mixed results. They believe that the solution lies in cooperation, not confrontation. They want to work with the U.S., but on their own terms. This clash of perspectives highlights the delicate balance of power between the U.S. and Mexico. It's a relationship marked by both cooperation and competition, by shared interests and historical grievances. The U.S. needs Mexico's cooperation to tackle the drug trade effectively, but they need to tread carefully to avoid further alienating their southern neighbor. To understand this conflict, you need to understand the deep-rooted corruption that plagues Mexico. The cartels don't just operate in the shadows. They've infiltrated every level of government and law enforcement. They bribe officials, threaten judges, and silence journalists. They have eyes and ears everywhere. This corruption makes it incredibly difficult to fight them, as they always seem to be one step ahead. There have been countless scandals over the years, exposing the cozy relationship between some government officials and the cartels. Some argue that this corruption goes all the way to the top. This makes it hard to know who to trust and who's actually pulling the strings. This corruption is a major obstacle to any real progress against the cartels. It undermines the rule of law and erodes public trust in the government. It creates a climate of fear and impunity, where criminals operate with little consequence. Tackling this corruption is crucial, but it's a monumental task. It requires a complete overhaul of the system, from top to bottom. It requires political will, transparency, and accountability. It requires a commitment to rooting out the bad apples and building a system that is resistant to corruption. The U.S.'s decision to label the cartels as terrorists carries a significant risk of retaliation. These cartels are not just drug traffickers. They are sophisticated criminal organizations with vast resources and a ruthless streak. They will not hesitate to use violence to protect their interests and send a message. The potential for retaliation is very real, both in Mexico and the U.S. The cartels could target U.S. government officials, law enforcement, or even civilians. They could disrupt critical infrastructure, launch cyber attacks, or carry out assassinations. They could unleash a wave of violence that would further destabilize the region and spill over into the U.S. The U.S. needs to be prepared for these risks. They need to enhance security measures, increase intelligence gathering, and work closely with Mexico to prevent attacks. They need to be prepared for a long and difficult fight. The stakes are incredibly high. This is not a game. This is about the safety and security of people on both sides of the border. It's about upholding the rule of law and combating a powerful enemy. It's a fight that requires courage, cooperation, and a clear-eyed understanding of the risks involved.